Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's a beautiful bird type of weather outside. I'm not good at jokes. But anyway, so my name is Aisha Dixon. I'm the director of the Emeriti Retirees Relations Center at UCLA, and we provide administrative support to retired faculty and retired staff. So we're so happy for this program today. And in the chat, I will put our information for our YouTube channel because we are recording this. And I will also put information about our e-newsletter that goes out twice a month. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so because our newsletter comes out in 2 days. So you can see all the fun stuff that we have coming up for September and October. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Michael Heafy to introduce our special guest today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're all having a cool, pleasant day. I'm Michael Heafy. I'm the chair of the program committee, and I want to thank you for joining us. Miss Barbara Wold, who is next door to me here on the screen, found Ms. Julie Hanson, and who will be describing her efforts in the garden today. So Barbara, thank you so much for your efforts, and I'll switch it over to you for the introduction.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. Our speaker today is Miss Julie Hanson from Wild Birds Unlimited in Santa Monica. Julie graduated from the University of Colorado with a degree in international affairs and attended graduate school in environmental geography at Indiana University. She wrote her thesis about the deforestation in the Yucatan Peninsula. She then served in the Peace Corps in Cameroon, working in agroforestry. She found her Wild Birds Unlimited store a perfect way to combine her interests. So our thanks to Michael Heafy and Aisha and Julie Hanson. If you would please hold your questions until after the presentation or use the chat option.
I was just going to add that everyone right now is muted. So feel free to type your questions in the chat or save them to the very end when I will unmute everyone and we'll just have chaos. Okay. All right. Go ahead. I think you're all set, Julie.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Okay, great. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, hold on. Shoot. Okay. Sorry, for some reason the chat bar is going to the top, and so
let's see.
okay, does everybody see it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, Barbara, for finding me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for Michael for setting it up. It's always a joy for me to talk about birds. I'm sure many of you know a lot about birds. I love learning more about birds from everyone else, wherever you live. So I'm looking forward at the end. Be sure and tell me what birds you're seeing now this time of year. I'll be mostly talking about, of course, the birds in our backyard, the birds you might see on your walk, the birds you might see if you're going out hills, local walks in the neighborhood. I won't be touching much on the shorebirds. I think that's an entirely different presentation or a longer presentation. So mostly those birds we're going to see every day or can possibly see every day in our local backyards. I like to start a little bit talking about bird identification resources that can be of value to you. We use a lot of guides in the store. I use guides when I go out on walks to kind of help me figure out what birds I'm seeing. If you wanted to think about having something like a Sibley's guide, it's just, you know, our book that we use in the store. We have Sibley's Guides of North America. We've got Western guides. Sibley was an ornithologist and an artist. So this is something we use to kind of use in the store to really get detailed information. But there's very simple flip guides that you can use, put on your chair when you're looking outside to see our, you know, top birds that we have. You can use an app on your phone, Merlin Bird ID app. You can take a photo using your phone that can help you ID a bird based on what the photo is or the description. That can be very helpful. You can use resources online through Cornell Lab of Ornithology, such as allaboutbirds.org, ebird.org, where you can actually become a citizen scientist. If you start IDing birds and making lists of birds, you can put that information in there, and that helps us to know what birds we have in our area, how healthy our bird populations are, whether they're declining or improving, what's happening. So that helps us to know a lot about birds. So I encourage everybody to become a citizen scientist if you're interested in that. If you don't know what a bird is, something strange pops up, you can't seem to identify it, and you use any of these other resources, give us a call. We love to try to ID birds for people. So there's a few resources that you can think about. I also like to kind of, I think it's interesting to note that we are actually, Los Angeles is the birdiest county in the United States. And that's when we do counts, Christmas counts, people go out and actually do counts on a weekend. We actually come up with the most recorded species of any county in the United States. In fact, we have more species as a county than some states have. So some people think of us as very urban. I did when I first moved to Los Angeles. I thought, we're not going to have any wildlife here. I grew up in a small town, rural town. I thought, I'm going to just probably go crazy here. And I've been surprised at the number of birds we actually do have. So we represent in our county mountains, desert, coastal birds, and we're on the migratory Pacific Flyway. So a couple times a year in the fall and in the spring, we get these birds coming up and down. So we might not see them all the time, but we can see them possibly stopping over in our yards or in our neighborhood. This photo is of lazuli bunting, and it happens to be one of the first birds that I saw when I opened my store right here on Wilshire Boulevard. So these guys migrate up and down, and if you have a water feature out, they'll often need to stop by for some respite just to get some water on their journey. So we actually, can create these little habitats in our yards that they need for the migratory birds, but our locals as well. So we're pretty fortunate here, especially our position right up against the Santa Monica Mountains, and the conservancy and the amount of wild lands that have been set aside. That said, I do want to kind of bring in just a study that was done a couple years ago that did say that we are down about 2.9 billion birds since 1970. So a lot of that has to do with habitat loss, pesticide use, and cats are kind of a number one issue we have as well, bringing down some of our population of birds. But we can, there's a lot of things we can do. So a lot of times in the store, we talk about how we can make a difference on actually improving the population of birds around us. And a few things we can do that I always just kind of want to bring up in my talks is planting native plants when possible, bringing in those native species that provide food and shelter for the birds. We reducing pesticides, and that helps to increase the number of insects that we're producing for the insect eating birds. Keeping cats indoors, making windows safer against window strikes. Window strikes are a leading cause of deaths as well. Drinking bird-friendly coffee. And that means that when those birds migrate down to coffee-producing regions, that those canopies are still intact. And watching birds, as I just said, like for ebird.org, that we continue to know how our birds are doing and the health of birds. So just a few simple actions that we can all do to help the bird populations. And then thinking of our backyards as critical habitat, putting in those native plants, putting in some water, and creating green space where we can. We can't go out and build a big park or a lot of space, but together our little areas that we have, which can be our backyard, our patios, we can think of them as critical habitat for bird species, as well as other wildlife, bees, butterflies, and other creatures. So I'm going to now move kind of on to the birds that we can see, kind of dependent on how much habitat we've created in our own area. I kind of define them, or I categorize them based on what they eat, because that helps me to look at their behaviors, where they're at in their territory, what their beak looks like, and just kind of helps me to think about what they're doing in order to help then go to my resource books to figure out which bird they are. So the 4 categories are seed-eating birds, the insect-eating birds, the nectar-drinking birds, and then the berry-eating birds. And so I'll start with the seed-eating birds, and you can see the kind of starting with the house finches, the beaks are going to be a little bit bigger there so that they can crack open these hard shells. One of the most common ones we see is the house finch, and the most notable trait there is going to be that red that you're going to see on the male house finch. The female is going to be absent of that color, but they're often together. So you're going to usually see a male house finch and a female house finch coming together, and they love sunflower. So if you have a feeder up, sunflower is going to be what they want. Or if you have any wild sunflower planted, then you might see them foraging in there when that's coming to seed. So one of our most common ones, and what we love about the house finch is their call. We love to hear them singing, especially right first thing in the morning to wake up to the house finches is fantastic. And then the next one of the other common groupings of songbirds, seed-eating songbirds, is going to be your sparrow group. They love millet. They would come to your feeder if you had millet or millet on the ground. They're ground feeders. And the white-crowned sparrow there with the 2 stripes, they're coming in now. So they're one of our fall migrants into the area. And the other one's the song sparrow and the chirping sparrow, also great song. We love to hear them singing. They don't always get a lot of attention because you might see them a lot just on the ground or not notice them as much as you're going to notice the white-crowned sparrows when they come back. But listen for their call because, again, one of our most beautiful songbirds that we have. A lot of people will call these guys the little brown birds because it's hard to tell them a difference. But again, sometimes these guides help us to differentiate between them. Some of the other groupings, these guys are all, again, ground feeders. Kind of helps us to figure out who they are by where they're eating. So are they eating on the ground? Are they foraging in the ground for seed that's fallen, or are they in a tree? These guys are going to mostly be on the ground. We've got the mourning dove, which you're going to usually see in a pair because they do mate for life. We're going to see the California towhee and the spotted towhee. The spotted towhee is pretty shy, so don't always we see them quite a bit in the Palisades, maybe in the mountains if you're in Westwood mountain type. We don't always see them here in Santa Monica. We see the California towhee quite a bit. Dark-eyed junco, used to see them mostly in the winter. We're now seeing them year-round. If you've got any yarrow in your yard, that would be a plant that they would come for once it went to seed, that would be a great one to plant if you wanted to naturally kind of draw these ground feeders into your yard. But they're all, great fun. People love the little junco. He'll chirp and kind of hop around, and just a really fun bird. They all are. I know I say that a lot. I kind of have about 50 favorites, so forgive me for that. And then we've kind of have our bigger birds in a way. The California scrub jay. From what I've heard is most people will say, I used to see the scrub jay all the time. What's going on? And I'm sensing that the numbers are down. And I think it could be that they've kind of moved away from more populated areas into more of the hills, but they are caching birds, meaning they'll take the peanuts, they'll take the nuts, and they'll hide them somewhere. So they will hide them and then come back for them later. So that's their behavior. So you can get peanuts in the shell and actually interact with them and hand it to them and feed them, and then they will hide them and then come back for more. They'll actually, chirp for you. We can hear them in the back of our store, and they'll chatter, and then we'll know we have to go out and feed the scrub jay. It took us about 2 years to finally get our scrub jay, but he comes now fairly regularly. So it's kind of a matter of maybe having some nuts on hand to where the scrub jay will kind of find you. And then once you find you, you can have that interaction with them. They can be pretty bold. They can kind of get rid of the other little finches and kind of scare those guys around. So you have to kind of know what you're working with the scrub jay, but every bird has their attitude. This guy just kind of has he's kind of the king of the yard for the moment that he's there. And the black-headed grosbeak is a summer visitor, so he's on his way south again right now. But you'll see that really big beak that he has. He loves the striped sunflower, loves to get in and crunch those big beaks. And it's related to the cardinal. If anybody's from the East Coast, that was a cardinal. So he kind of looks like our towhee in coloration, but we always look forward when he comes in March again. And then our goldfinches. We love the goldfinches for the color. They are similar to our house finches in that they love the diced sunflower. If you've got a feeder, specialty feeder for them would be the Niger food. And in the wild, they eat thistle. So that's what they're eating out in the wild. You can also put out some fiddleneck for them in your yard, but they're wonderful to attract, and people don't always see them. They might say, I've never seen a goldfinch in my yard. Do we really have these birds? And we absolutely do. It's just a matter of bringing them into view. That's the thing about bird feeding. If you wanted to feed birds in your yard, is it brings them into your view, so you can actually see these birds that are actually out there, but you're bringing them into be able to see. So we absolutely have them. The American goldfinch is not as common, but it's possible to see them. And we have the Lawrence's goldfinch as well, but even less common. And now I'm going to move on to the insect eating birds. Two of the flycatchers that you could see might be the black Phoebe and the Cason's kingbird. The black Phoebe looks like a little tuxedo on, and their behavior is that they'll usually sit up on a wire and they will catch their prey, usually an insect, in flight, and then go back up without even landing on the ground. You can get mealworms, and you can interact with them, and you can throw it up, and then they can catch it. So they're pretty entertaining to interact with. The Cason's kingbird is a little louder, unique with that yellow on them. So kind of going into winter, we expect probably we'll see more of the Phoebes and the Casons around, so we can interact with them a little bit, probably come back and visit our area. So flycatchers are pretty amazing to watch them eat. If you ever go up to Will Rogers, a great place to to see is just right at the house and watch the flycatchers. Other insect eaters is going to be our western bluebird, the ruby-crowned kinglet, the wrens, the nuthatches, and the mockingbirds. We have more wrens than that. We have the Buick's wren, the house wren, and we have the canyon wren, depending on where you're living. But the Buick's wren and the house wren is fairly common. And the kinglet, you'll notice, you won't always see that red crown, but you'll notice the kinglets have those big eyes. And the western bluebirds, they love open space, so they love cemeteries and they love golf courses and they love grass. So look for them swooping down looking for worms in the grass. And the mockingbirds, you'll probably have heard them sing in the springtime, even in the middle of the night, and not so much this time of year. We don't always see them or notice them around, but definitely that time of year you'll notice them doing their mating calls. And the white-breasted nuthatch, they're usually coming down a tree, and they can come down a tree upside down and underneath. Just amazing little acrobats to watch. One of my favorites is definitely the nuthatch. They love peanuts as well as the suet and the mealworms. And the oak titmouse, I put his own slide out because he happens to be our California bird. He lives within our borders only, except maybe a little southern part of Oregon, but pretty much just within the border of California. And so he's a true native Californian, and he's got the little tuft right on his head. And he's pretty shy bird, might take a little bit of peanuts, come to your feeder, maybe take a little bit of peanuts and go eat it somewhere else. So you might see one or two at a time, generally not a whole group of the titmice at the same time, but super cute. I will also say that that's kind of another behavior to look for. Some birds are flocking birds, some are more individual birds. So the finches tend to flock together, so you'll see a lot of them at one time. The oak titmice or the bluebirds might come at maybe 4 or smaller groups, and then some of them are just more solitary than others, or like the doves will be in a pair, but then the pair can grow. So kind of knowing whether it's a flocking bird or more of a solitary bird helps to figure out what they are. And then we have the woodpeckers. So we have a pretty healthy population of woodpeckers all the way up from the mountains, and even my back parking lot where I've got some feeders set up, I've been seeing woodpeckers the last couple of weeks. So we have the hairy, the downy, the nettles, and the acorn. The nettles we've been seeing probably the most frequently if you're in Brentwood, Santa Monica, Westwood, and acorns we've seen out in the Palisades. Hairy downy, anywhere up in the mountains you'll see those. So they're always fun to see a bright bird like this at your feeder, or anywhere on a pole. If you're hearing anything out on a pole. The acorns will actually take the acorns, and they're hiding their acorns. They're putting them in a lot of times telephone poles. They'll do that. Sometimes they've been known to do it at houses, so which is not the greatest thing. And then we have the warblers. They look around your yard for these little birds kind of eating and picking out bugs around your yard. They are coming through now. So this is kind of prime warbler season for us. Some of them will move farther south, some of them are going to stay. But our most common ones that we can expect are going to be the orange crown, the Townsend, and the yellow rumped warbler. They also can get into nectar feeders, so they've got kind of a sweet tooth. They can get into nectar plants, but mealworms are going to be probably the main draw for them. Suet, and then any insects you have around your yard. So look for them. I want to before I move on to the next group, I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of insects, because without insects, we're really not going to have birds. We have the insect eating group, but all birds during nesting season really need these insects to feed their young. So the more insects you have in your yard, the more insects we have around, the more healthy birds we're going to have. So do not, not using pesticides around your yard. The pesticides are killing the insects. We want the birds to eat those insects for you. So we want to try to reduce the use of pesticides and leaf blowers as well. Leaf blowers are just really blowing all those beneficial insects up, and the leaves themselves will break down and help produce more insects that the birds can use, and the caterpillars as well that these birds need. So we just can't, we just can't sustain the bird populations that we need without having the insects. So look at your yard as a restaurant, and how these foods can be available for the birds, and the insect and spider webs as well. Spider webs are used for the hummingbirds to make their nests. So the hummingbird nests expand with these brilliant spider webs, and so the hummingbirds will go and grab that. So I always think twice before I take down a spider web, because I know that a hummingbird can use it. Speaking of hummingbirds, we'll go on to nectar drinking birds. We have a couple of the most common ones that we see here are the rufous and the annas. The rufous is the one that's a little bit more copper and green, and the annas is the one that has a little bit more of the pink there. And there we have them all year round. So we're fortunate that the other few that we have come in seasonally. Some come in from the desert when it gets really hot, like the black chin will come in and nest here on the coast during the summer months. And then the rufous will come in. But year round, we can expect that the annas and the allens are going to be here. If you have a feeder up, and sometimes you'll see it more active at others, probably just depends on whether you've got natural native species out that are nectar producing, and they might go to that first before your feeders. So throughout the year, their activity kind of goes up and down, and they nest from August through September. So they, they have a really long nesting season here in Southern California. So best time to prune is going to be September through December. Other than that, there could be a nest of many of our birds nesting in our trees. Another nectar drinker is the hooded Oriole, and they come up from March through August to nest in our palms, and they're master weavers, and they weave on the underneath of the palms, and they drink nectar. A lot of times people don't realize they have them, except they see them in the hummingbird feeder. And so they drink the same nectar, and then they also eat birdberry jelly is another thing that we give them. They can use mealworms as well to feed their young. And then our berry eating birds would be the cedar waxwings. They usually are in large groups, and they'll go from one tree to the next and just eat the berries, which they're fantastic to see. Their coloration is amazing, and they've got looks like just these dark sunglasses on. Truly, I usually see them mostly in the winter months, but there is a couple groups that stick around that we can see in certain locations all year round. And then we have the western tanager and the California thrasher, and good trees for them would be the coffeeberry, toyon, and blueberry. And then I just put these guys in because I do get often asked how to tell the difference between a crow and a raven. And the ravens are larger than the crows, so that's one way to tell a difference. And they're usually alone or in pairs. So crows are going to be in these larger groups called a murder, and during the day, they go into smaller groups, but at night they'll go back together with their murder, and they usually live in what's called a rookery. And their tails are different. So a raven's is kind of blunt, and the other one looks more like a little diamond there. If you ever go out to the Channel Islands, you're going to see more ravens, and then there's other parts of town you might see some more ravens. But around here, I would say mostly are seeing crows. And then talking about our raptors, we have in our owl category, we have barn owls, the western screech owl, and the great horned owl, all living in our local mountains. The barn owl does pretty well also in the suburbs and the urban areas. They adapt well to human activities, and they do an amazing job of taking out rats. So they're great for natural rat control. And these guys, the barn owl and the screech owl, both have more of a screechy sound, and the great horn has a hoot. So if you hear the hoot, it's going to be your great horned. If you hear a screech, it'll be the other. So if you're out at night listening, that's how to kind of tell the difference. But a barn owl can, during nesting season, a nesting family can take about 3,000 rats out of our environment. So great consideration if we can get more owl boxes up and around for natural rodent control. And then our hawks, some of the few that we'd see more in our urban, suburban area would be the Cooper's hawk, the sharp-shinned hawk, and the American kestrel. The Coopers and the sharp-shinned look a lot alike, other than the sharp-shinned is smaller. It's less than about 12 inches. Cooper's hawk will come in and around your yard. He might, if you have a bird bath, he might just kind of hang out in your bird bath. Been known to do that. So it's quite surprising for some people to just say, what is this hawk doing with these bright red eyes in my yard? But they're amazing to see. The American kestrel is our country's smallest falcon. So he's beautiful. And they're coming around to eat small mammals. Some of them will eat small birds, but these are the guys that are definitely in our urban. We have the other falcons that you'll see way up high, the red-tailed hawk and those guys. But I wanted to talk a little bit about these, because these are guys you could actually potentially see in your backyard. Just a quick note on butterflies and bees. If you can, plant any milkweeds or some other plants that can draw in butterflies. Butterflies are on the decline as well as bees. So great plants that you can put in your yard as well. And a water feature. Just wanted to make note that all birds need water, clean their wings and drink every day. So might be a way to see some great diversity in birds coming through on that flyway that need it. We've had so many fires, and we've had disruption in landscapes here and there, where birds are used to seeing maybe a water source here or a place where they can rest here. And if we have these things in our yard, then they can rest in our yards instead of those places that they might have normally gone to in the wildlands. Nesting boxes, we have, nesting boxes are available for wrens and for the barn owl. This is a barn owl, and for bluebirds. So it's a great way to add nesting habitat back where it's no longer available, such as cavities and trees. So if you have a space that you could do that, that's another way to just kind of help the birds, is by adding that habitat back in. We work with the National Wildlife Federation. If anybody's interested in having their backyard certified as a wildlife habitat, you can ask more about that. It's basically making sure you have the food, water, shelter, places for the wildlife to raise their young. And that's kind of a fun program to be a part of, and inspires others as well. And then finally, just kind of wanted to touch on bird walks. So if you wanted to get out and actually get on the trail and see what's happening, the LA Audubon is just now getting back to kind of offering guided bird walks again. And Santa Monica Audubon usually has one as well. Their kind of schedule isn't, it looks like they were starting to schedule, they usually do Malibu Lagoon. Doesn't look like it's scheduled yet. LA Audubon we're starting a new one at Will Rogers, and I'm going to actually be leading that one. It's going to be a beginner bird walk, October 23rd. Looks like I wrote that twice. Tentatively scheduled for October 23rd. Other locations that they generally do are the Bayona Wetlands, Franklin Canyon, and Kenneth Hahn. So those are scheduled as well. A couple of dates in October. They, provide binoculars, how to use binoculars, how to use guides. Just really fun to get out. I think a lot of people are looking forward to being able to get out now and do some of these guided walks. They've been not available for the last year or so. So you can go directly on their website and kind of look at their calendar as more go back online. And that is about it. I've got other resources if anybody ever needs any for Audubon Society native plant lists, Cornell Lab of Ornithology, local nurseries to use. Anything you need, just give me a call. My store is on Wilshire at Centinela, right across from Armstrong Garden Center. So now, questions?
Thank you so much, Julie. Just can you send me your slides so I can put all these links to people, because I know they'll want to see them afterwards. So
Sure.
I tried to keep up in the chat with the one Merlin all about birds, but it got to be too much.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions in the chat was they thought the state bird was a quail. No?
It's not. Okay. It's not the state bird.
Okay.
The state bird is actually the California quail. That's correct.
Oh.
My bird that I always bring out as the state, I just make him notable, is the oak titmouse. He's not the state bird.
Okay. Can you stop your screen share so we can
Yeah.
open it up for questions? Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
And then it's
Okay.
Oop, there goes my chat. Hold on. Pop out.
Yeah.
There you
So
go.
hopefully I made that clear.
Yeah.
I have not changed the state bird from the California quail.
Are there different
Thank you.
bird populations between West LA and the Santa Monica environment versus the San Fernando and other hotter areas of LA?
Yeah, definitely. As we go from region to region within LA, because LA is such a big county. That's why we get so many birds that come in up into our count, because we do represent mountains, coastal, desert within our county. We get different birds. So we don't see, for example, we don't see a lot of robins here in Santa Monica. But you can go out to the other foothills and you might see some robins. So it's going to be specific. Yeah, it's more locally specific. There's going to be some you're always going to see, but there's going to be some differences.
And how can you construct bird-friendly yards?
Bird-friendly yards. So it'll start with the things that birds need, kind of the similar things that we all need. It's making sure you have food, water, shelter, a place to raise your young, and then we want to do sustainable practices. So food could be native plants that produce food, the nectar, the insects, and then of course the water, and then raise your young in maybe a nesting box or under plants. Some birds nest on the ground. So having that, but, and then sustainable practices, they're not using pesticides in the yard. So yeah, having the elements that create that habitat.
Yeah. So I have 3 more chat questions and then I'll open it up so people can unmute themselves. How often and with what should we clean our bird feeders?
Okay, a general bird feeder, you should, I would recommend that you take it down. Probably depends a little bit on the activity level, but let's just say you do it every 3 weeks or so. I would do it with a mild bleach solution, 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. So bring it down, soak it, get all of the old stuff out, rinse it, dry it, put it back up. If you have heavy bird activity, so you've got a lot of bird activity, you do it more frequently. If it's time of year where you have less, you can do it a little bit less. If you've got rain and you've got moisture in there, you want to always take out the any kind of moisture that's gotten in the bird feed, so we don't want to get any mold in there. So if it's rained, you just don't want that to settle, stay in there. You want to then take that out, clean it out, put up fresh after a rain.
Okay. I filled up my waterfall fountain with lots of rocks because of algae. The water gets warm from the sun. Do birds not like warm water?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. They probably like it cooler. I'm not sure what we would mean by warm, but you probably want to keep topping it off with cooler water in the summer months. For sure. If it got too hot, that would probably be a deterrent. But that said, I've seen birds using water sources that, I mean, anything from water going down a drain on the side of a road. So they're going to be looking for water. It depends on how limited the water sources around them are and what they need. So if it's all they have, they might take it. But I would say the cooler the better. It's the only way that they can cool themselves down. Let's just say that too. So they don't have other ways to cool themselves. So water is a fundamental way that they cool themselves down. So we don't want it to be too warm.
One last chat question, then we'll open it up. I have a Cooper's hawk that nests in my neighborhood. Are they safe from the crows that seem to rule the morning hours?
Well, they can get it. They can fight with each other. So the crows will try to come in and interact with those Cooper's hawks. So I don't think that there's much you can do other than you're going to see some interaction between the two. The crows can interact with the mockingbirds. They'll fight off the mockingbirds. You'll see a lot of interaction between those two. So if the Cooper's hawk's nesting, they're going to do what they can to have that fighting between each other at that point.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Okay.
I put my my hand up on the symbol.
I see you. Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Michael asked about the state bird. I don't know how many of you remember this. I'm going to try to show it. And that is, let's see if I can do it.
It's going to be hard with your virtual background.
Yeah, well, no, I should be able to do it. What it is it's let me see if I can twist it right. There was a block of the states and their birds, and it has the California quail. And I'm sorry that it doesn't show up, but I brought it over here so that people could see it has every state bird and the name of the state on it. And that was in the days when, let's see, postage for first class was 20 cents. So anyways, postage has gone up since, but being a bird watcher since I was a young child, I've done, I've kept all kinds of stuff. And the other thing I wanted to do was this, you should be able to see, and that is
Rotate it a little
there
bit.
it is.
You're almost there. You're almost there.
It looks like the National Geographic birds.
Birds, yeah, it's the National Geographic
Okay.
Field Guide to the Birds of North America. And one of the problems with getting just one guide is that the birds, they're many birds have many different molts and so on. And so, and by the way, I know both David Allen Sibley and John Dunn, who's the one that wrote this one. And you're just seeing one bird. And if you get the larger Sibley, it'll have many of the different birds. But if you get his birds of the West, it will only have these. And then I had a suggestion to Julie. You did call it a chipping sparrow, but on your slide, it said chirping sparrow. There is no chirping sparrow.
Apology. It's a chirping sparrow. Chirping.
No, it's chipping, CHIPPING. There is no such thing as a chirping sparrow.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I would suggest that you change that. I have quite a number of others, you know, if you're
chipping.
interested.
Chipping.
Yeah, several other different things to add. But anyway, that's mainly. And the other thing is our bird population has plummeted. There have been so many problems. There have been counts out now for what the bird population is, and it's gone down drastically. There are all kinds of problems, including these new wind turbines that have gone in, which have been devastating to birds. And all these towers for transmission lines and so on. So we need to keep our bird population up and do whatever we can to try to increase it.
Thank you, Paula. Okay, I see a couple hands. Let's go with Margaret and then Barbara.
Good.
Hang on, you have to unmute Margaret.
Unmute. Okay, so I noticed on one of your slides, you said you were bird rescue. Is that true? What does the bird rescue part mean?
Okay, we are not a bird rescue. We're not certified bird rescue, but we have resources. We have a lot of people that do come to us that have a rescue or in need of that. So we will let you know where to go. If you've got a hummingbird and you need a hummingbird rescue, or you've got another native species, California Wildlife Center, for example. So we'll help you to figure out where you, and we also have that on our website. So we have a list on our website.
Okay, because we usually call California Wildlife Center in Malibu.
We do too. Yeah.
It's quite a drive.
It is, but actually to let you know, you can, if you find a bird, you can drop them off at the West LA animal shelter, and they have volunteers that will come down and take the bird from there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So we do realize, they do realize so they do have volunteers now, as well as the West Valley Animal Shelter and the North Valley Animal Shelter. So Van Nuys, and if anybody's up in the North Valley, which is
West Hills.
Up in that area. So, but yeah, the West LA Animal Shelter, I guess they pick up at least once, maybe twice a day for that now. So you don't have to drive all the way up.
And you're actually on Wilshire at Centinela?
Yes.
Which side is the street? Are you on the north or south side?
North side.
Okay.
Across the street from the garden center.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay, Barbara, you had your hand up?
Yes, Julie, do you know of any way to reduce the crow population in neighborhoods?
Well, the thing about the crows is that they're the corvid group. They're very intelligent. They're the most intelligent bird population they have. They're omnivores, so they eat whatever they can eat. So they're opportunist birds. They're thriving. They're doing really well, and they don't have a lot of predators. So I have ideas on how to keep them out of your yard. If you need, if anybody's having a problem with them in their yard, and especially if anybody has a nest in their yard and wants to keep them out of their yard during the time that there's a nest, because they do raid nests of other birds. So, and what we use is a crow decoy. So it looks just like a crow, and you just lay it out on the ground like it's a dead crow. And because they're so smart, they have this communication through the rest of the group that they sense danger, and then they tell the others that there's danger in the yard, and you'll hear this big a lot of squawking, and then they'll disperse from your yard for the time being. So that can help if you're laying down some seed or something, or if you've got any nesting. So we use that. It's a non-invasive way to kind of get rid of them from your yard for the time being. So we use the crow decoys, but we can't, they're a wild animal. They're protected bird species like everybody else. So, you know, we have to treat them exactly the same.
There was someone asking about a future program on shorebirds. So we'll try to coordinate that with Michael to see about the future. You have a question, Mo O'Connor's iPad?
Yeah, it's Mary O'Connor.
Okay.
I was just wondering about wild ducks that migrate through your pool in the spring. What do you do about that?
Well, do you enjoy having them in your yard or not? A lot of people do.
I do, but then when the babies are born, the crows eat them all. And so it's very tragic at the end.
Then I would suggest maybe the crow decoy for you. Get the crows out of your yard for a time being, because that's just, you know, it goes back to kind of the crows. If we could help, you know, just retain some of these duck babies, and that would be helpful. We do get a lot of ducks that come over and stay in pools. A lot of people will, for that time, you know, help the mom and find a secure place in that yard for that time, with feeding them until those babies fly, and then the mom usually flies off. So it's kind of how you're feeling, and just making sure that the babies can get out of the pool, and hopefully, you know, not having chemicals in the pool. If the water, you know, if you're not putting chemicals in the pool, that's helpful. So, but they're usually finding little grubs in your yard that they can eat, little worms and things, but you can supplement that with food if you want to. But we can probably help you get the crow out, and maybe with that decoy. It's only $12.99. It's a $12.99 little helpful little decoy, and it does work. It's amazing.
My husband put up a little ramp for the babies to get out of the pool, and then the crows came and got them. So we got to
get the crow out of the yard, because that's not fun to see. It's really not. It's similar to having a Cooper's hawk come in, and Cooper's hawks are also, you know, will eat small. It's not fun to see. So I understand that. But if we can help have a more success rate for the ducks, and then, you know, that's a good thing. We just don't have a lot of habitat. We don't have a lot of ponds. We don't have a lot of, you know, lakes and natural environments. So that's why these ducks are looking at our yards for this habitat. So if we can help during the nesting time, then, you know, maybe that's an okay thing.
Anyone else? I didn't see any other hands up. Okay, Mary Peterson, and then we'll go to you, Michael.
I'm curious about the owls. We had some owls up on campus off the sculpture garden. There were a couple that nested actually on our building for a couple of years, but none of them looked like the three that you showed. And or at least I thought they were probably the great horned, but they didn't have such large horns as the picture that you showed. And so I was curious as to what they might have been.
The horns could have been back. They're not always visible. What was the nest like? Was it an open nest type of thing?
Excuse me, they were great horned owls, because I had seen them there, Mary.
What?
They were great horned owls because
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
I thought they were. But I never saw them with the horns up like that.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great.
Thank you. Okay, Michael.
Julie, do you have a favorite bird song that you can imitate?
Oh, I was thinking a song about birds. That I can imitate. You know, I'm actually not that great about with bird sounds, and bird songs are as a whole other thing. I think I love the finches. I love finches. I don't imitate them well, but I think my favorite is just the most common birds is just waking up with house finches, and sparrows, and some of our most common ones. I know that's probably pretty basic, but yeah, that just is kind of the sound of, you know, sunrise and waking up. It's much better than cars and a little alarm clock. So that's what I wake up to these days. How about you, Michael? Do you have one?
Good.
That's for my Cooper's hawk that's in the neighborhood.
Oh, good. You have.
Fantastic.
Although
Any
they've
other-
never come to land on me, which I should be grateful for.
Yeah, that's your duck. That's what you just duck when you hear that.
Okay, let's see, any other, Margaret? You have to unmute yourself again.
Okay, mute.
Nope, yeah,
Is
okay.
it, okay, oh, right, you're right. Okay, hawks versus falcons. What's the difference, or is there? And do we have both?
We do have both. Technical differences. Oh, you got me on that one. Maybe size.
Okay. I can look it up on Google. Yeah,
I'm not,
okay. But they're not the same.
yeah, they're a different category.
Okay,
I'll have to look that one up too.
okay.
This is fascinating. I'm curious as to what birds I have in my backyard. I'm in the San Fernando Valley, and I see these birds and I see these squirrels that run across the yard. So if you make house visits, come by and let me know.
Well, if you want to take some photos, use the Merlin Bird
Oh.
ID app. Start
I'll
with
do that.
that. And I always just say, start with your top 10, just start making a list, write them
Uh-huh.
down. And before you know it, you're gonna know 10 birds,
Okay.
and then you're gonna know more, and then you're gonna start just noticing more. And once people start noticing more, before you know it, you're just amazed at the birds you've discovered. And then wherever you go, then you start traveling, and then you start noticing birds when you travel, and just kind of builds from there.
That's amazing. So let's see, there are lots of birds on campus. So maybe again in the future, we can have like a walking tour. We can like
Yeah.
kind of point out, because we did a presentation last year with one of the environmentalists, I believe, where she talked about the hummingbirds they put on the campus. I forgot what her name was, but
Yeah, you're talking about Nurit cats.
yes,
Nurit.
yeah.
I believe there's a fairly new Audubon group at UCLA. Nurit's she's doing photography. She's doing some great things with birds. So yeah, maybe bring in some of the students that are doing the Audubon group now, and find out what's going on bird-wise on the campus. I'm sure there's some amazing birds on campus.
We will figure that out when it's safe to do so. Any other final words, Michael or Barbara or Julie?
I just want to thank Julie very, very much. We've enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
So everyone just be on the lookout. Once Julie sends me her slides and some of those links, I will send a follow-up email. And then you can go out bird watching.
Thank you, Aisha.
Yes,
And
thank you
visit
so much.
Julie's store.
Join a bird walk if you can.
Mhm.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Have to-
Thank you.